Hi, this is Susan Bennett, the original voice of Siri. Here's what's coming up today on another great episode of On the Nose with Randall Kenneth Jones, the new Jones Show podcast.
What I value the most in my day-to-day life is just learning from other people, or leaning and relying on my friends, and gaining wisdom and insight from people I've never met before, but knowing that there's always something that I can learn from every single person that I come across.
If you believe that everyone you meet knows something you don't know, then you're ready for the next bold evolution of the Jones Show podcast. On the Nose with Randall Kenneth Jones introduces you to people who are in the know and ready to share their special brand of know-how with you. From artists, authors, and activists to entertainers, educators, and entrepreneurs, On the Nose will elevate your ability to influence the world we share. Here's the host of On the Nose, Randall Kenneth Jones.
Maria. I just met a girl named Maria, and suddenly that name will never be the same to me. Has anyone ever done that for you on a podcast?
No, actually, if that's the first time, and it was on key, which is very impressive.
I
Usually
played the
people
role.
go,
Yeah, I played the role.
yeah, people go for like the Santana song, Maria, Maria. So that one. But I like the originality of you choosing a different song than the one that I normally
Well,
heard.
it's been a few decades since I have been Tony and West Side Story, but I thought, and this came to me like 10 minutes
Wow.
ago, I thought, well, you sang. You sang.
Well,
Uh-huh.
yes.
Hollywood
and
Week of
because
American Idol. Yep. I
And
know.
because my sister, Judy, of course, runs in the family a little bit.
No, I've been waiting for the Dr. Judy album. Dr. Judy Ho, her sister, clinical psychologist, the doctors face the truth. Love her. Been on this show 3 times, coming back. I've been asking her for the album for years, and now I want the Host Sisters album. That's really the new
Okay.
goal.
Well, listen, you're first in line, so you'll be the first to know about it if it ever happens.
You know what somebody actually said to me? They were very serious, and I really want to do this. They want both of you to come back and do the show, my show, at Christmas, and I'm the third ho. We do the ho, ho, ho show.
Love it.
So I think,
I'm in.
yeah, no, I mean, somebody said that. And I don't think there's a third ho child, but
No,
wow.
not that we know of. So,
This is so awesome, Maria. You are the first to be on the new Jones Show podcast, which is now referred to as On the Nose with Randall Kenneth Jones, the new Jones Show podcast. I chose you and I asked you to do it because you're a professional poker player. You're a gambler. You're a risk taker. Okay, here's where I confess I'm not. I don't gamble. I don't take risks. I take calculated risks. But it's not, I'm a Virgo, so that might tell you I'm going to have a little bit of difficulty here. But I thought this is a risk of taking a 5-year-old podcast with Siri as the announcer, Susan Bennett, the original voice of Siri, with an established base and changing the name. But On the Nose to me implied knowledge and people who were experts at what they do. And you are an expert at poker, at gambling, at risk taking. And where you and your sister, I finally figured it out, where you cross over, psychology.
Yes, absolutely. First off, I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'm very honored to be your first guest on this new iteration of the show. And, it's not a surprise to me that you don't feel like you're a risk taker by nature, because I would say that that's predominantly the average response of a normal human being. I think we are all about preservation. We're all about, making sure that, whether it started from our ancestors of surviving and, all of that has to do with playing it safe a little bit, of just making sure that you make it to the next day, the next stage, the next whatever, And so I totally get that sentiment, and it's very familiar to, I think, most people. But I think for me, risk taking always came very naturally. And so when I found poker, it just seemed like the perfect fit for my personality type.
Do you know why? What about you? What in you? What in your background? What in the way you were raised made you a risk taker, made you fearless? I just admire it so much. Ginger Z from ABC, very good friend of the show. Same way. Total risk taker. Lisa Guerrero from Inside Edition, good friend of the show. Same way. Risk taker. Me, not at all. What in you made this happen?
I think it's a couple things. I think for one, a big factor that played into it was the fact that I come from an immigrant family. My
Hmm.
parents, you know, risked a lot to give
Mm-hmm.
up everything they knew to leave Taiwan so that they could come to America and give us a better life.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't know the language. They had, pretty much pennies in their pocket. They came with two children and they were really willing to take that leap of faith. And so I think I naturally really followed in their footsteps in that sense of being able to take a risk with what I chose to do with my profession and with my career. But also, I think being the youngest of two helps because my sister followed the straight and narrow. And, God bless her, there's nothing wrong with being, teacher's pet and the perfect, ideal first child for my parents. I don't resent her for that or anything, but she
This
was a
none of this
perfectionist.
surprises me. She's not described herself
Right.
this way. This tracks. This tracks for our Dr. Judy. Yeah,
Totally,
totally
right?
tracks. Yeah, yeah.
So she was a huge perfectionist and she was so intent on following the rules and listening to everything my parents said. And I think that left an opening for me to do the exact opposite because I didn't want to be like my sister. I wanted to make sure that I differentiated myself from her, probably because I didn't think I could live up to the expectations of of what she the path that she kind of paved. I felt like if my parents expected me to get straight A's like my sister, I would never be able to achieve that level. And so I just went all the way the other way with it, which was like, let me just do the complete opposite so that I'm a constant disappointment to them. And so that I never have to fit into this box, into that mold that was set out for me. And so I think that definitely played into why I became such a risk taker, such a rebel without a cause, really.
Oh, you had a cause because I understand perhaps when Judy was in high school, there's a chance you caught her with a boyfriend and perhaps you blackmailed her with this information. Is there a
For
chance? Does this
sure.
resonate? Is there a chance
Yes.
I've talked to her
Oh,
before this
yeah.
interview? Yeah, there's a chance.
And listen, I'm not going to sit here and deny that that happened because I am proud of it. I was like, you know what? Everybody thinks my sister is so perfect. And she snuck a boy into the house. I cannot wait to tell on her because I was so tired of my parents thinking that I was the troublemaker when it's always like the innocent, quiet ones, really. Like I was making all my trouble out loud. Everybody knew. But who knows what other boys or skeletons my sister has in her closet.
Yeah, I have a sibling like that called Paula. So we have that. We call her
Yeah.
Paula Perfect, and she got away with everything because she had the entire time. So, yeah, I guess
Right.
there were, little things. I believe that Judy described you as the boss for quite some time and how you would negotiate the rules of the house with your parents regarding perhaps even no curfew. And I guess there was some interesting time with nuns as well in Catholic school.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely got to a point where I was doing so poorly in school and I was getting into so much trouble that my parents had to send me away to boarding school. But up until then, it really was one of those situations where I felt like I didn't want to follow their rules. And so I was constantly negotiating with them to get a later curfew and to do more and to have more freedom and to have more autonomy. And there wasn't really a lot they could do about it because I was not, I wasn't all talk, right? I definitely always backed it up. I would would run away from home. I would leave and tell
Your
them and
threats
not
were
tell them
real. Your
anything.
threats were
They
real.
were. They were. Like, I wasn't afraid, I was pretty fearless in the way that I behaved as a teenager, for sure.
But let's, I have to go back and let's nod to your parents for that risk, for bringing you to this country. And I now see how that would absolutely impact your view of what is possible and what can happen to you and for you. So I really want to give them a shout out for that, because what an extraordinary gift they gave you. And now you're with me, and they gave to me and to us who are watching this. So, so how do you end up in poker?
So I played some card games, some strategy games growing up. I mean, the first one that I vividly remember is my grandfather teaching me bridge as a kid. And I remember loving bridge. I remember just loving the competitive aspect. Every week we would go to the bridge center down the street. We would play against other people, and every time we played, we would be on top. We would win. We would be in the top 3. And so it was, like, very heavily encouraged at that point by my grandfather, like, "Okay, let's play more bridge. Let's learn more games. Like, you seem to be good at this." And then when I got to college, I made, friends with some guys that were in the dorm down the hall, and we would hang out all the time. I was very much like one of the boys, but for whatever reason, on Friday nights, they had a boys' night, which I wasn't included in, but I'm always included. So I was like, oh, this is weird. And then I finally just got so curious that one Friday night, when they were having these so-called boys' nights, I just knocked on the door of their dorm with some beer in hand as kind of a, like, "Hi, I'm crashing, don't mind me," because who's gonna turn down free beer? And I walked in, and they're playing poker. They're playing Texas Hold'em. I had never played before, but I had that background in card games, and I was like, "Oh, this is fun. Let me sit down and play. I'm already here. Just teach me." So, I felt like they were a little bit reluctant to include me initially, but once they saw how quickly I picked up the game and how much I enjoyed it, they kind of took me under their wing in terms of just teaching me a little bit more about the strategy behind poker. And then we as a group would then go and play at the local card room, because I went to school at UC San Diego, and there were a lot of Native American casinos there
Mhm.
where you could play when you were 18. So we were able to legally play in these card rooms of our first or second year of college. And so it just became a thing where every day after all my classes were finished, I would drive to the card room with or without my friends, sometimes just by myself if nobody else wanted to go. And I would stay there all night. I'd be playing until 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I would drive home, sleep for a few hours, and then go to class the next day. And that continued on for my entire, 4 years at UC San Diego.
And you studied communications and law,
Mhm.
which tracks. This
Yeah.
makes sense to me, because I looked that up because I wanted to see what you studied as part of that to end here. Let's give the audience here a little bit of information about where all of this ended up for you. You are the youngest woman ever to be inducted into the Women in Poker Hall of Fame. You were the 2019 Global Poker Award Broadcaster of the Year winner. Your commentary includes the WSOP Main Event on ESPN, the PokerGo Super High Roller Bowl on CBS Sports, and WPT's King of the Club on, okay, this is where I can't read, FSN?
FSN.
On
Yep.
FSN. You were in the top 5 and on the all-time money list for women, the top 5. You're so young. You're going to get number 1. I mean,
I
you
hope
you
so.
believe, well, let's not hope. I mean, let's put that out there. I want that for you.
Thank you.
So
I
let's
want
put
that
that
for
out
me
there.
too.
I want that for you, and I bet Dr. Judy wants that for you too. I want that for you. You've been on The Amazing Race. You're the second person. Ryan Ferguson did my show. He was on The Amazing Race. Love the show. You were on CNN's Anderson Cooper, CNBC's Stock Draft, of course, American Idol. There's other shows that you were on. Is what does risk reward mean to you?
So, poker has taught me so much about life, right? I think poker, there is a huge element of the most optimal way to play poker has to do with, you know, making strategic decisions that limit your risk, but you have to be willing to take on some risk in order to win the hand, to win the pot, to win the tournament. So it's all about this
That is me.
calculated
Okay,
risk,
I get
right?
that because that is me. I get that. That is me.
Yeah, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
and life is a lot about that. A lot about, there's so many unknown factors both in poker and in life, right? Poker is a game of incomplete information. And so a lot of the times you are having to make the best decision possible with the information that you have and hope that the desired outcome is achieved. And that's very much like life. We don't always know everything before we're jumping headfirst into something, whether it's a new career opportunity or whether it's even a friendship or something. You don't have all of the know-how, you don't have all of the ins and outs, but you want to be able to make a really good decision that limits the risk to an acceptable threshold for you personally, but you also know that without risk, then there would be no real reward, right? So I think to me, I've approached life very similarly to the way that I approach the game of poker, which is I have a high risk tolerance, so I'm willing to take a lot of risk in order for a big reward, but it's not going to be made without assessing all of the variables and all of the factors. It's going to come with a lot of educated speculation and there's a long thought process that gets me to that decision point, so that when I make it, I'm very comfortable with taking on the risk regardless of the outcome. So in poker, we talk a lot about not being results oriented because in poker, there is an element of luck. You can go in with the best possible hand, which is two aces, and you can still lose because 80% of the time you're going to win with aces, but 20% of the time
Mhm.
you will lose to a worse pair than aces. Those are simply the odds. But when you go into it, you can't expect to win every time. But what you're hoping is that you're going to win more times than you lose because that's what the math tells you. And that if you're comfortable taking on that risk, then you would be happy to go all in with aces any day of the week, right? And so it's just about not attaching emotion to the outcome because even if the outcome didn't go my way, I'll be very happy in the way that I chose to make that decision and then following through with that decision.
I'm rewinding to something that is so in my head right now. Poker is a game of incomplete information. Life is a game of incomplete information. It's just a brilliant analogy. I mean, probably the advantage to those who are watching the video version of this probably saw the light bulb pop off in my head. Do you have an example of where your poker skills have played out recently in a positive way in your life? In a situation that happened, a dilemma that happened, a relationship? How do you use these skills in life?
Yeah. Um, I wouldn't say there's like one specific thing that jumps out at me of, recent memory, but for sure in my business decisions, I am taking a lot of these calculated risks. I feel like, some of the biggest decisions I made, some of the ones that I've walked away from, some of the biggest opportunities that I walked away from was because, I simply looked at the risk versus the reward and decided that it wasn't worth it. But a lot of my ability to read people, to kind of intuit somebody's sincerity in a situation because I'm so used to having to read them at the poker table, that really helps translate to, a lot of the times when I'm taking meetings, I always ask for them to be face to face. If it's going to be for an important business decision, I want to be sitting across from that person. I want to be able to look at them, to read their body language, their
Mhm.
mannerisms, um, to determine whether or not I feel comfortable working with this person in a capacity where we have to trust each other. to some extent. And so I think every time I am making a business decision, people go off a feeling sometimes, right? A lot of people will be like, oh, this feels good to me. Or, they only think about the plus side. They only think, oh, I could potentially make this much money, or it could potentially, be this incredible experience. But I'm also willing to look at all of the downsides. I think that's why I don't feel like I go into a situation where I'm very naive or I can be very gullible, because I think I have the ability to weigh everything out very logically, and not attach emotion to an important decision. But I think it's really hard for people to separate that sometimes, which ends up leading people into making bad business decisions.
Separating emotion from business is ridiculously difficult for me because I've never believed in the concept that it's just business. I
Hmm.
believe there's a human there, and I cannot begin to tell you how much I agree with the whole concept of face-to-face, in-person communication, the handshake, look each other in the eyes. You may tell me no on this next question because it may tip your hat. Is there
Hmm.
one little hint on body language that I should be on the lookout for? Is there one really giveaway that this person's bluffing or they're lying? Is there anything that I can take away to be on the lookout for?
I think a good takeaway that will has a high probability of being true for most people is that what we call in poker kind of a first level tell, which is whatever they're doing, it's the opposite. So if they act very strong, so if we use a poker example
Mm,
versus like a life or a more generic example, if somebody's at the poker table and they're betting with like a very strong kind of very strong physical way, like the way they put their chips in is very aggressive. They're kind of like slamming their chips down instead of like gently cascading the chips. There's like different ways that people put chips into the pot, right? Then that usually signals weakness. So if they try to come across in a physical way that they're strong, then that means their hand is actually weak, and
well,
vice versa. So
that's
that's like the
everywhere too.
first level
Yeah.
tell.
Well,
Right.
and that's completely people who are overly proud, overly cocky, overly bold, overly boastful are typically, from my experience, covering up something.
Totally.
What would I be surprised? I do not know your industry. I go to Vegas. I have my roll of quarters. I go to the slots. I lose my roll of quarters, my two roll of quarters, my $100. 30 minutes later, I go, okay, that was not fun for me. I'm done with the whole thing.
Mhm.
So it's just not me. But what would I be surprised to know about the industry of poker and the people that you work with? What would surprise me about poker professionally?
It's a really good question. First off, I just have to say though, you're playing the wrong game. Slots, there's a reason why you never walk away a winner. That is the one of the worst odds games in the house, in the casino's favor. So we'll have to talk a little bit more about that
No,
next
when I
time.
come to Vegas, will you
But
play with me? Will you go out? I'll go on
yes,
it.
well,
Yeah.
we're gonna find some more, some games where the house either has less of an edge, or maybe you'll just have to take up poker, because there's definitely an edge to be had in
It's like
poker if you
the kiddie.
play
I'll be on the
well.
kiddie slope for skiing, but I'll be on the kiddie slope for gambling. So, and I'll have you there
Exactly,
going, Randy, they
exactly,
won't hurt you here. You can go here. So,
basically. Um, so something I think that might surprise people about the poker industry, or the people. I mean, it's really, I think, it it's about, I think there's a lot of negative stories that come out
mhm.
when it comes to gambling or poker. I think the mainstream perception is that it could be a little bit seedy, or there's all these like degenerate types and characters that are like milling about. But honestly, there is there are people in poker that are incredibly good, smart, generous people. I feel like people always think that we're edge seeking because we play a game that's very zero sum. But, there's such a difference in the way that people treat poker in the last 20 years and now. The people that come into poker now, they look at poker for the skill game that it is. It's not about, gambling as much as it is something like chess or something
Mm-hmm.
where, there's incredibly smart people that love strategy games that are just looking to kind of excel in this competitive way. And that ends up breeding some really interesting people. Like, I feel like the most interesting people I have ever met in the world are poker players or people who love poker. And so I think that it's a misperception, the way that the general public thinks about poker or the people in it. And that stigma is something that I really hope I'll be able to see in my time in the game kind of go away, because I just feel like there's so many good people in poker and there's so many interesting people in poker. And honestly, I tell all those people all the time, I think they should leave poker because I think they could actually solve real world problems. Like, these are the people that I would want to put forward to, find a cure for cancer. Like, that's how intelligent and just like well-rounded some of these people are. Is they have so many interests. They're the type of people that dive in head first and give their all to poker, to studying the game, and I can only imagine if they put that energy into something else, what they could do in the world.
If you had that chance and you could
Mhm.
put all your energy and all your skill into something else and change the world, because you host sisters do that. That's a host sister thing. What would that be?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things. Like,
But
I'm
that's great.
always
But that's great.
oh,
That's great, because I love people who are interested in a lot of different things, which is exactly why On the Nose exists. So I can explore people who are interested in things in many cases I know nothing about. And that's what I want for the listener. So I
yeah,
love that.
yeah. I feel like I've always just felt a big pull in the direction of some type of philanthropic endeavor. Like, I feel like there's so much need and from others, and so much help and effort and assistance that we can give, like, to just other human beings. Like, I want to do some type of outreach. I've volunteered with kids before. I've volunteered at homeless shelters before. I've volunteered at women's shelters before. And, I just think that for me, if I could spend all my time and energy and efforts devoted to something else, it would have to be something that could help people in general. I don't have a specific direction. I just know that at some point in my life, I am going to spend more time doing that.
It took me a long time to really embrace working and supporting philanthropic causes. It has been the greatest gift I've ever given myself. And this show is that, because this show exists to entertain and educate and to open people's eyes to what is possible, what is out there, different people who are experts at different things. So maybe they'll explore something they never considered, because I was a theater kid, so I was kind of in a very narrow little niche of, if it didn't happen
Mhm.
on a stage, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
And throughout my life, I discovered that wasn't a real healthy or interesting way to live. And so
Mhm.
now I get to share you and all these other wonderful people. Your answers have been exquisite. Your insight I'm going to be thinking about for hours. So I'm just going to summarize and close this. Maria, I'm not going to sing again. I did well. I didn't embarrass myself the first time. I thought, am I going to
I
have to?
wouldn't mind if you did. I
I
wouldn't mind
tell
if you
ya,
did.
I tell ya, if I did it
Mhm.
again, I was like, if I do it bad, am I going to have to start? I was like, yeah, I'd have to start all over again and say take two. In summary, what do you know?
Wow. Well,
Do you
I
like that
I would have
question? You're
to
the
say
first person I've
I
asked it of. I think
I
it's a cool
love that
question.
question. It's such a good question because there's so many different
Mhm.
directions somebody could go with it. Um, I think I want to tie it into poker in some way. So I will say what I know is that poker is so much like life in the sense that it's about the people. And in the game of poker, I think the strongest asset that anybody could have is to know your opponent, to know the person you're playing against, to know the person sitting across the table from you. And in life, I feel like that completely has so much relatability to what we're doing on this planet in the first place. It's all about the people that we surround ourselves with, the people that we come across. It's all about that human interaction, that interpersonal relationship. I think that is by far the most important thing, and what I value the most in my day-to-day life is just learning from other people, or leaning and relying on my friends, and gaining wisdom and insight from people I've never met before, but knowing that there's always something that I can learn from every single person that I come across. And so, poker has really allowed me to have access to so many different people from so many different walks of life. And I feel like in life, it's allowed me to be much more open-minded, and to be able to sit down with just about anybody and find something in common with them.
For more information, visit onthenose.com. Please be sure to follow On the Nose with Randall Kenneth Jones on YouTube and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. For On the Nose, I'm Susan Bennett, the original voice of Siri. And yes, I know. Do you? If not, see you next time.